Right now, one of the biggest things here in Joplin is the rebuilding process. As you can see behind me, only 5 days out from the storm, not much has changed yet. The fifth graders' reenactment was rained out, but KOMU-8's Matt Moreno shows us it didn't dampen their experience. Universities will still see a 4.8% decrease. Now, that's a little less than Governor Nixon's original proposal. We have new details tonight about the January death of a 6-year-old boy struck by a school bus. The City of Columbia requires all rental properties to have this certificate of compliance, as well as regular building, heating, and ventilation system inspections. A chance for redemption tonight. The Tigers will play Texas Tech at 8:30 at the Sprint Center. Missouri has more than 25,000 members. Organizers say that's an all-time high for the state. District administrators say when teachers get a new friend request from a student on Facebook, they should probably hit decline. Police officials told me Dresner told Chief Ken Burton about the affair on Friday. New updates on the nuclear crisis in Japan, and the fighting continues across Libya today. I have been on Facebook and Twitter all day, so I have seen those crazy Columbia snow pictures. But here in downtown St. Louis, it's not quite the case. We've seen more freezing rain than actual large amounts of snow accumulation, although that has started to pick up in the last few hours. Now, the roads and highways are moving slowly, but that icy precip has taken a toll on the liveliness of the city. 130 miles east of Columbia, ice, high winds, and plummeting temperatures have turned a normally busy downtown St. Louis into
a ghost town.
Edward Corrigan is a 37-year St. Louis resident. He's plowed snow for 10 years, but says this storm has shut down the city.
Not a lot of people, not a lot of stuff going, not what you typically would see in the heart of the city, near Busch Stadium, Kiel Center, City Hall.
With more ice than snow, I-70 remained open to those brave enough to venture out. And even though snowfall totals here don't rival mid-Missouri, the Missouri National Guard is still on call to bring extra help to the east side of the state.
People are showing the good sense to stay in their homes or to stay off these streets and be safe until the streets department and the federal agencies can get to work on this.
But all it took was 24 hours for winter's worst to show the show me state who's really in charge. Officials with the Missouri National Guard say they've been on scene since Governor Nixon declared a state of emergency last night, and they'll continue helping local law enforcement and drivers until this storm clears up. Reporting live in downtown St. Louis, Hillary Mullin, KOMU-8 News. A jury convicted Richard Clay for Martindale's death back in 1995. Clay sat on death row at Bonne Terre Prison until last month. Just hours before Clay was scheduled to die, Governor Jay Nixon halted his execution. This is the first death row sentence Nixon has stopped since taking office. However, Nixon did say he still believes the evidence shows that Clay is guilty. In his first television interview since finding out he would live, I sat down with Richard Clay and talked about what life is like for him and his family, all of whom expected him to die.
He was a really good kid.
Joyce Cox is proud of her son. Their monthly family meals fill her schedule. Richard Clay's picture is posted all over his mother's Southeast Missouri home.
But this has so many memories of just me and him. And that's why it's...
But her son hasn't been home in over a decade.
I've been here since 1995.
For Richard Clay, home is here. A level 5 maximum security prison in Potosi, Missouri. Clay's roommates, 800 of the state's most dangerous and high-risk offenders. But for Clay, how he got here is still a question he asks every day.
I called my mom and dad, and I remember that's my dad, and I was like, Dad, I said, they're charging me with a murder. And he's like, what? And I said, yeah. And then I actually looked at the officer, I said, who'd you say I killed? He said, Randy Martindale. And I said, Dad, they're trying to say that I killed Randy Martindale.
The Missouri Supreme Court and the 8th District Circuit Court have upheld Clay's conviction, but he maintains his innocence.
You know, I wasn't a great person on the street. I was involved in drugs and you know, so I wasn't no Boy Scout. I said, but no, I wasn't a murderer either.
And court documents show there is no physical evidence linking Clay to the crime scene. Prosecutors relied on witness testimonies and crime scene analysis to convict Clay in 1995. Police never found the murder weapon.
The prosecution's theory was that I hid in this house in a bedroom closet for an hour and a half. And I left no fingerprints, I left no hair. The fibers off the clothes, the fibers found, it didn't match me. The fingerprints didn't match me. The hair didn't match me.
Clay says he now spends his days focused on his faith in God, but he says sometimes the reality of his situation makes it hard to face the next day.
Days you don't want to get out of bed. I mean, some days you don't want to go do your prison job, you don't want to go to recreation. Sometimes you, I mean, for a few years when I first got to prison, you know, it's just like, is all this really worth it? Sometimes you say, let's just hurry and get this over with.
Clay's parents live 2 hours away in Commerce, a small town on the river near Cape Girardeau.
Our son was not a perfect man.
Despite his drug-filled past, the Coxes stand by their son's innocence, even when it hurts.
You cry a lot, you pray a lot, you argue, and you go back and all over every day. And it's just part of, oh, we get to keep him another day. Well, we get to see him again. And it just breaks your heart. There's no way to say it how it makes you feel unless you find it yourself. It's happened to you. And then you would understand that.
A heartbreak they say would fade if Clay could get a new trial.
I have to be realistic, and I do have a sentence of life without the possibility of parole. And I like to look forward to that, but if that doesn't happen, I'm gonna still continue to make the best of what I have.
Clay's attorneys would have to present new evidence to convince the Missouri Supreme Court to rule that he deserves a new trial.
This is my old room. Probably got a solid week and a half in it before I had to move. So.
Kyle Key and 3 friends signed the lease on this house in mid-August. When another friend needed a place to live, Key says his landlord added the 5th roommate to the lease.
We got in contact with our landlord, and 5 was okay, and there was 5 people on our signed lease.
So imagine Key's surprise when just 2 weeks after he moved in, a Columbia police officer knocked on his door and demanded to see his lease.
They were just asking some questions about how many people that lived here.
Key and his roommates were in violation of Chapter 29 of City Code. According to this ordinance, no more than 3 unrelated people can live together in a single-family home. Key says police were suspicious when they noticed 5 cars in his driveway. That's 2 more people than are technically allowed to live here. While it's not an offense to have cars in your driveway, it is a way for police to build a case against you.
We may have another violation such as trash issues or abandoned vehicles or unlicensed vehicles on property, or maybe a rental that isn't registered with the city under the rental conservation law. So we may investigate other things too and come across too many people living in a residence.
Key says Officer Thomason told him 2 of the 5 roommates had 24 hours to move out.
That's pretty impossible, if you're a college kid and you have all this stuff in your house and school's about to start, it's hectic, you got a lot of stuff going on, so we couldn't really find a place in 24 hours, stay with our buddies. So the next day we got another knock on the door and we all received tickets for not knowing the law.
Officials at the Office of Neighborhood Services say the ordinance is not new, but it is news to many.
Unrelated people in one house, 6.
I knew there was a law, but I didn't know what it was. Usually about 4 people to a house.
I have no idea. I didn't even know there's a law on that.
One of the things we've worked on is to try to raise awareness about these issues, because it wouldn't be something that everyone in Columbia is aware of. And we are not surprised by that.
I put the blame on us, for not knowing the law. I put the blame on our landlord for not, telling us, like, there's 5 people in this house. There's only supposed to be 3. You guys need to be safe.
But Key's landlord, Tim Fisher, says he only signed the lease to 3 people.
I didn't sign a lease for 5 people. I signed a lease for 3 people.
Key contends Fisher put 5 people on the lease, but says the landlord confiscated all of the old leases after police caught him and his roommates. Regardless of who is at fault, Britt says many Columbia landlords still assume the number of bedrooms a home has is equal to how many people can live there.
The owner of that home may think, well, gosh, if it's a large home, then why can't we have fill every bedroom and have this many people live here? So in many cases, I imagine that there's probably space for that many people. There's just other issues that happen when you've got that many people living in one home.
Issues like excessive noise, trash, and traffic that Britt says affect the quality of life for all residents.
The important thing to know is for people that are living in Columbia in single-family neighborhoods that, if it's next to you, this is an issue.
Hillary Mullin, KOMU-8 News, Columbia.